So let's talk about the USA's 2025 Gold Cup performance. And despite not having our A team or the A team players or, whatever other scenario circumstances that led up to having this specific roster, I think we still learned a lot about the US men's national team here. Some positive, mostly negative. I'm going to cover, I think, 5 different topics for you guys. And if you guys agree or disagree, let me know in the comments down below. Or if you have another point to make that maybe I missed, let me know as well. We read every single one. First thing that I think we learned from this year's tournament is that the MLS players are just nowhere near good enough to make this U.S. men's national team competitive. Now, I know. We've known that for a long time. I'm not going to pretend like I've spent the last few years thinking that maybe some of these MLS players can come into the team and transform it, and they're good enough and they can compete with these players that play in Europe, like Pulisic, McKennie, Weah, those kind of players. But it was painstakingly obvious that these players are just not up to the challenge of being a top competitive international side. If you just watch the final, you can say, yeah, Mexico brought pretty much their A team minus Rodrigo Huescas. So that's the reason why the USA lost the game, or were dominated the whole game, or had zero shot at winning that game, which all those things are true, yes. But you even go back a few games. You go back to when they played Costa Rica, when they played Guatemala, even some of those group stage games versus Saudi Arabia or Haiti. I don't think the USA looked that good at all. And I think a lot of it goes down to the fact that we have some MLS players in this team that were starting every single game over other more experienced players that just really proved to the nation that they cannot compete. Now, I'm sure some of you guys know who I'm talking about, but just to reiterate, that's Patrick Agiman, that's Sebastian Berhalter, that's Max Arfson, that's Luca De La Torre to an extent, that's Alex Freeman at right back, just to name a few, because those are the ones who are starting the most. Yes, there's also Diego Luna, who I will mention and talk about in a little bit. I don't think he should be grouped into this conversation, but those players that are named, and if I missed any, let me know in the comments, are very obviously not U.S. men's national team players. First of all, they shouldn't have been in the first place. We've talked about this in weeks past. Everybody has, that this roster from the get-go has been disappointing with the inclusion of some of these characters. Now, the inclusion is not so much my issue, right? But the fact that they're being played consistently, they were starting almost every single game for this team in this tournament. That is where my issue was. You had players like Johnny Cardoso on the bench, who I know. First of all, I'm a Betis fan. I love Johnny Cardoso. I know he's not that good for the U.S. men's national team. But games like these, tournaments like these, where they're supposed to be developmental, that is where you put these bench first team players out on the pitch like Johnny Cardoso. You give him the opportunity against weaker opposition to get a foothold on this U.S. men's national team and really be able to stake a claim in good form and maybe a potential first team starting position moving forward. But what does Poch and the USSF do instead? They bring on these third, fourth, some of these players even fifth string on the depth chart for the U.S. men's national team, and they start them over and over and over again. That's where my biggest issue was here. I feel like I have to mention some players that could have instead been called up and just weren't for footballing reasons, whatever that may be. And I'm not going to talk about Pulisic. Obviously, Tim Weah, Weston McKennie were the Club World Cup, and Gio Reyna, who 12 minutes. He could have skipped it and been a part of this team, but whatever, that's beside the point. Some players that could have been called up by Poch were Joe Scally, who had a really good Copa America at the time and for some reason can't make the Gold Cup squad here in 2025. You have Josh Sargent, who I know isn't also good for the U.S. men's national team, but like Johnny Cardoso, you give him the opportunity in these tournaments to perform and get back on track. You got Tanner Tessman, you got Alex Zendejas, you got Cameron Carter-Vickers and Austin Trusty, and you also got Caleb Wiley, just to name a few. If there's any others I missed, mention them in the comment down below. But every single one of those players I just mentioned deserved and should have been in this team, and let alone been in this team, should have been starting these games. Even if you have these players who are, A/B tier players to an extent for this team, at least bench players for the A team, you give them the opportunity, and I think if you get them out on the pitch against Mexico, I think you have a much better chance of being able to play your game, first of all, and not having to be dominated by Mexico the whole time, and maybe even win the whole damn thing. Every single one of these players should have been there. Every single one of these players could have made a difference in the entire tournament, but no, for whatever reason, we decided to go with MLS players. And again, like I said, yes, developmental tournaments, but at the same time, who are we developing here? The MLS players who don't deserve to be here at all, or the players that have had their toes dipped into the first team a little bit and deserve a chance here on a big stage to stake their claim in that first team spot. I know personally who I'm picking. Now, I'm not even sure what's worse here because there's a lot more that goes into this whole team selection thing that we We're pretty sure we know that there's way more behind the scenes than just Posh sending a 26-man squad to CONCACAF and being approved. There are other players at stake. There's other players, as in, big corporate kind of guys like Don Garber, whatever. Obviously, they're involved to some extent. So I don't know what's worse, because there's two options here, right? It's either that Poch went into this not knowing his team and called up these MLS players willingly and chose to leave those other players in the dust. I don't know if that's bad. I mean, that is pretty bad if that's the truth. Or the U.S. Soccer Federation is forcing these MLS players into the side. We know this has been a rumor. Johan Cruyff even mentioned it in his autobiography that this is a thing that goes on, which is crazy in itself. But which one is worse? I am not entirely sure, because both fucking suck. Both are horrible, and both are not how you develop your team into a top nation. Either way, it still sucks that we were left with this roster, and they showed it that they don't fully deserve to be here, most of them. The roster really wasn't even built well. Even Charlie mentioned it on their little podcast for the US men's national team, like, veterans and whatnot. Like, this team just wasn't built well overall. There was no wing options really, to the point where we saw like Berhalter on the wing, Tillman on the wing. It just doesn't work. It didn't work, and it was very, very painstakingly obvious to watch. Now, a more positive thing here, a more positive MLS related thing here is Diego Luna. I do think, like, yes, he didn't have a good final against Mexico. And I don't think that's fully his fault. He had to cover that like left back position a lot because of Max Arfson, who, by the way, isn't really a natural defender. And it was very, very obvious. Diego Luna wasn't able to play his game and was instead forced to kind of drop back and help defensively, which sucked. And that made him look a lot worse than I think he deserved to. But otherwise, the rest of the tournament, I thought Diego Luna was fine. It was a little slow to get a kick started, but once he did, he was performing damn well. And he is one MLS player for sure who I think deserves a more of a look in future camps for this U.S. men's national team, because I do think he earned it here in his Gold Cup performances. The World Cup 2026 roster, I'm not entirely sure yet. We still have a whole year. A lot can happen in a year. I want to see his performances in the MLS first, as well as maybe the opportunity to be with the U.S. men's national team in future friendlies, September, October, November, and beyond, depending on who they play against. I do think he should be involved in those, but I don't want to say, oh, he should be there for the World Cup 2026. He should be starting. He should be captain, blah, blah, all these things, which I'm hearing on social media and I do think are a little ahead of themselves. I do hope we see a little bit more from him in future games. Just I don't want to say the World Cup 2026 yet. Without a doubt, the second or third most important player on this entire roster for this tournament, alongside Malik Tillman, alongside Chris Richards, I would say he was very, very important for the attack. And without him, I don't think the U.S. men's national team gets to the final of the Gold Cup at all. I would absolutely love to see a future with him on the left, Christian on the right, or whatever combination. But is he going to be starting over Tim Weah off the bat? I doubt it. But he's definitely made a good name for himself, even far beyond MLS fans or USA fans. I mean, we're hearing him now, and he's gotten a lot of hate from Mexico fans and whatnot because of him being Mexican American and choosing the USA and really not doing much in the final. He doesn't deserve all that. I do think he deserves a lot of praise for this one from every fan, but that's beside the point. Obviously, it's not how CONCACAF works. He does deserve future opportunities, and I'm very happy he took the opportunity here, because I've been really high on Diego Luna for a long, long time. I think he's fully deserved way more opportunities with this team that he hasn't gotten up until this point. Like, even, with the Olympics, he wasn't caught up for the Olympics and other camps that he probably deserved to be in and was not. He fully deserves the opportunity here and maybe even move to Europe pretty soon. But this Gold Cup really made him look really good. Now, some more positive things I think we learned from this tournament is that Malik Tillman and Chris Richards are without a doubt starters in the future for this huge men's national team. Now, Chris Richards has always kind of he's been, on the teeter just a little bit, but I think this tournament really, really showed that he is a leader in that back line and has the quality to play alongside the world's greats, or at least the USA's greats. I mean, we've known that for a little bit, right? He's a big player for Crystal Palace, who just won the FA Cup over in the Premier League. He's been, like I said, in and around the U.S. men's national team, and you could really see that he was trending towards that point. But I think the tournament really ascertained that he is a big, big asset in this U.S. men's defense, who truthfully haven't been able to lock down a solid, consistent back four. I think Chris Richards is the first step, probably alongside Anthony Robinson, in that back four. I'm not even going to mention Tim Ream. He's probably going to be a starter for the World Cup. And if you're a fan of the channel, if you watch our streams or any of the USA related video, I don't like Tim Ream anymore. I used to love Tim Ream, but beside the point, Chris Richards is without a doubt center back one. Now it's just a matter of finding his partner alongside him to create a strong center back partnership. And then Malik Tillman as well. I don't think gets enough credit for how he performed in this tournament. There were some moments where he might have tried to overdo it a little bit and was neutralized pretty heavily by that Mexico side in the final. But I do think he deserves a lot of credit. And in my opinion, he was probably the most important player on this entire pitch consistently through all games that they played. He was fantastic, scoring, assisting, making good passes, dribbling well. It was just a breath of fresh air in that attack that we haven't seen a little bit. We needed for a while, especially because I feel like it gets really stagnant overall, especially when you're watching players like Ajiman play, Josh Sargent play sometimes. Tillman really, really added a lot from that cam spot that I do think we need moving forward. Obviously, that cam was played by a bunch of different players. Pulley plays there sometimes. You even have Brendan Aronson play there sometimes. I think Paxton deserves a look, but he hasn't been getting it. I think Malik Tillman should be that starting 10 spot if Poch wants to roll with that kind of offense, but he definitely deserves it. For a lot of people throughout this entire tournament, I think he was their player of the entire tournament. Now, that opinion might change based on that final, but I still think he deserves to be up there at least in the top 2 or 3 conversation for best player of the Gold Cup tournament. Without a doubt, he, just got his move from to Bayer Leverkusen from PSV, excuse me, for I think it was like 35 or 40 million. We know how good of a player he is. He struggled before the tournament with the U.S. men's national team, but after this, I think it really got him into that good form and good standing with the team to earn him more spots, which is exactly what I would have hoped from players like Johnny Cardoso if given the opportunity. Even if Gio Reyna was here, I wish he got that too. But that is how you should have been playing some of these players in this tournament, not just Malik Tillman. These are the opportunities that should have been given to, like I said, Joe Scally, Johnny Cardoso, Josh Sargent, Tessman, Zendejas. These players should have gotten the same opportunity that Malik Tillman would have got. And with those players, I think we could have won the whole thing. Beside the point, Malik Tillman had a great, great tournament and should have his head held up high after this entire one because he put a lot on the line. I mean, his body was being absolutely decimated by these opponent players, and he had to endure a lot to get this U.S. men's national team to where they were. So good on you, Malik Tillman. You deserve a more of a look for the starting 11 moving forward in whatever competition they play in. Another thing we learned from this tournament that is definitely more on the negative side is Pochettino. We have to talk about Pochettino a little bit because he has not shown these world-class manager levels that we have seen him in years past in his career. I don't think many people were expecting that prime Tottenham manager when he came to the U.S. men's national team. But what I do think people expected was that maybe he would care a little bit. And I'm not saying he doesn't necessarily. I'm sure if you gave him the mic, he'll say he loves his team, he cares. This is what's most important to him right now. But I just don't see that when it comes to the Gold Cup games. And I know people share that opinion with me as well. It was very obvious that he wasn't able to tactically change the team and adapt to certain scenarios or being down or ahead or whatnot, or even make the right substitutions sometimes or at the right timing. It always seemed like it was a little bit late. And even then, the substitutions were kind of a little meh and things that you didn't really want to see in those moments. All these things lead me to feel that Poch doesn't really care, or for one thing, didn't care about winning these games. Even that game against Guatemala, right? They started off with 2 goals, and pretty much after that second goal went in, they kind of just stopped playing. Like they didn't really care anymore beyond that point about what happened in the game, and they were just kind of trying to coast to victory. Now, yes, they did win, but that is just not how you do it. Guatemala were looking scary. At any point, they could have scored a second goal, and that was more on Guatemala not being able to finish than the USA defending well. It's just little things like that really make me scared about having Pochettino. And I know a lot of people, at least on football Twitter and social media and whatnot, are saying that maybe he shouldn't be the manager for the upcoming World Cup. And if you agree with that, I don't blame you necessarily. I do think he's at least on track to get there. There's just a lot more factors that limit that decision from being made. But up until this point, I was still fairly hopeful and I was probably backing Poch more than many other people. But after this one, it wasn't really looking that good anymore. And I'm not that faithful in him moving forward that he's going to be able to really mesh this team together, get this team playing football that wins games, scores goals, defends well, maybe going into the World Cup having a possible quarterfinal or semifinal finish. I don't feel that from this manager anymore, which sucks because one, the hype around his appointment was fantastic. Moving on from Berhalter to him, absolutely amazing. And not to mention the damn paycheck that he's getting from this, which I think is like 6 million a year. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's the number I was hearing. But any number around that or beyond that is wild to me because he hasn't earned it. He hasn't done shit. And not to mention other things outside of this tournament, like recruitment for dual nationals and whatnot, like Nathaniel Brown, left back for Frankfurt in the Bundesliga, things like that. Like, I feel like he could be doing a lot more, and maybe he could have redeemed himself with some tactical masterclass in this tournament, but he really didn't. He really did not do that at all. And as a result, I just don't feel the same passion from him that I would have liked to feel in this moment from any manager. Like, how do you replace Greg Berhalter with this guy who is literally a managerial legend in world football? You replace Berhalter with Pochettino, and we're getting similar, if not worse, results from that overall. Like, I don't like Berhalter at all. But I think credit does deserve to be given to him that maybe it wasn't his fault to some extent. I don't know. I'm getting a little too ahead of myself. But Pochettino here, I wish could have been a next step over Berhalter, and a year out from the World Cup, I'm just not seeing that. Now, for the last thing I think we learned from this U.S. men's national team, and again, if I missed anything, let me know in the comments down below. But I think we learned that we should be worried for this 2026 World Cup. Like, truthfully, tell me anything that we can look forward to, anything positive, really moving forward in the grand scheme of things. And I mentioned Diego Luna, I mentioned Blake Tillman and Chris Richards. Yeah, great, cool. But when you look at the overall performance of this team and what they could do or what they are doing right now, what is really making us excited or confident or positive for the upcoming 2026 World Cup? There's not much. There's really not much. I really do wish we pulled more from this Gold Cup to be able to sit here and make this video and me telling you guys that I learned that these players are up to the challenge, that the B and slash C team players can compete, and there's a lot more competition to have be made. That maybe the rest of the playing field isn't that good, isn't as good as we thought they were. No, I can't sit here and tell you any of those things ahead of the World Cup. And as a result, I am pretty worried. We have a whole year, yes, but let's remember here, we only have friendlies up until that point. The luxury of hosting the World Cup means that you're automatically qualified for it. So Canada, USA, and Mexico are already in it. But comparing the USA to Canada, Mexico, at least, they can, I don't want to say cruise or coast, but they have a way stronger foundation a year out from the World Cup than we do now. Canada, maybe a little bit worried. We're going to have a video about that coming up pretty soon, so make sure to keep an eye out for that. They might be a little worried too, but they still have somewhat of a good foundation because they're at least playing most of their A team here and whatnot. The USA doesn't have that in comparison to those two teams. Following the last official set of competitive matches ahead of that, we have no identity, no certain starting 11, I feel like right now. And even if you do, they're still not playing it. Like, so we haven't seen them play in like 2 years, to be honest. We haven't seen our best 11 play together in like the past 2 years. Doesn't necessarily know how to coach this team or doesn't care. That's another thing too. And honestly, the list could keep going on, but I don't want to bore you guys just too much. But yes, all that being said, there are way more negatives after this Copa Oro than positives for the U.S. men's national team, and that is very, very scary. And we should be worried. We can't keep coasting through that, this false sense of belief that the USA is number one in the region, because they're not. USA has the best depth in the region, which may be on paper, but is not turning out to be that on the pitch. The USA has players playing in these big leagues in Europe, in the Champions League, Europa League, Prem, Serie A, La Liga, things like these. Yeah, that's great and all, but what does it matter anymore? And it's obvious, because we've been saying that for 2 or 3, 4 years now. It's obvious that doesn't fucking matter anymore when it comes to this team, and that should not be a reason why USA fans should feel safe going into this World Cup. Yes, it's cool. Yes, you can watch your players play for these big teams and big competitions. That is awesome, just knowing that he's American. Don't get me wrong. But when it comes to this U.S. men's national team, it has yet to translate. Not saying it won't translate. It has yet to translate. Big difference there, and I'm not seeing it happen yet. I can't say I'm going to see it happen soon in these upcoming friendlies in September and whatnot, but that's reality for the U.S. men's national team. We're going to have 4 years until that last World Cup, which was pretty hopeful, pretty fun. I don't think they overachieved. I don't think they underachieved. I think they did pretty decently for the team at the time, but that was supposed to be the setup for 2026. And we spent 3 years doing absolutely zero, nothing going into this next World Cup. Mexico, who even I would say was in a worse spot around then, and in a worse spot maybe in the following years after, have since turned it around, have been able to get a much better stronghold and foundation for this team, despite all of the Mexican Lima X drama that happens all the time. they're still looking way better before this World Cup than we are. And that is very disappointing considering we had all this time to figure it out since then. But that's going to be it for me, guys. Of course, if you have a different opinion or you agree or disagree, let me know in the comments down below because we will read and react to as many as we can. Leave a like if you guys want more CONCACAF content moving forward. We're going to milk the shit out of this Gold Cup, so I apologize in advance. We definitely will be. But if you want more CONCACAF content going into the World Cup, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for said content. And yeah, my name is Elijah. Hopefully, see you guys in future videos in a much better mood. And yeah, it's going to be it. Take care, guys.